Morning, everybody. Today's lesson will be over Chapter 7 of Animal Farm. So if you could open up your books to page 84 or your PDFs to 84, that would be excellent. So Chapter 7 opens up with the animals really feeling the pressure on the farm. Conditions are starting to get even worse. And some areas where I want to read to you sort of reflect this would be page 84, where it says they were always cold and usually hungry as well. If you look on page 85, it says for days at a time the animals had nothing to eat. Starvation seemed to stare them in the face. And regardless of these conditions being so terrible, we still have the animals pressing on and working just as hard as ever. This is evident through Boxer and Clover. Okay, they work and work and work. This is Orwell making a comment about, the corruption that could occur from a revolution, especially in the case of the Russian Revolution. While the animals, or the people, if you're connecting to outside of the text, initially believed that they would be better off after the revolution, the misuse of political power has caused them to be in a condition that is just as bad or is as worse as what had happened beforehand. Okay, so we've got the issue with starvation. So the food rations are not optimal right now. We've actually got them falling pretty short. And this is something that Napoleon believes is something that cannot get out to the outside world, that nobody can know that they're really struggling. And his solution to deceiving everyone is to have the sheep going around commenting on the fact that the food situation is better than before. He also fools everyone by filling a bin full of sand and then piling the leftover grain and meal on the top of it, so it looks like they had this surplus. Really this shows that Napoleon's truly a clever person. He's intelligent. It also shows the propaganda that he's putting out there to everybody, making everybody believe something that's not actually occurring. So he's successful in this. He fools Whymper, he fools everyone. But I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the beginnings of a rebellion in Chapter 7, because the conditions are so bad. Animals are throwing a little bit of a fit. This is actually seen with the chickens. They've gotten this order to surrender their eggs. They consider this to be murder, and they react by protesting. And how Napoleon handles this is sort of ruthless. In fact, he cuts off their rations so they don't get anything to eat, and then he threatens anyone who decides that they want to help the chickens. This results in 9 casualties, so 9 chickens die. But instead of telling everyone that this is because of their protest or for rebelling against him, he lies and tells all the animals that their deaths are a result of an intestinal disease. Why would he tell them this? Because he doesn't want the animals up in arms about it. Okay, if he was responsible for their deaths, the animals might not agree with that. So he has to lie. Once again, we see in Chapter 7 that Snowball is used as a scapegoat. In fact, anything that goes wrong, it can be blamed on Snowball. It's even said that Snowball's been lurking around the farm causing trouble, and this again also prevents the animals from blaming any failures that have occurred on the farm with Napoleon. So he's not going to be blamed for this, and it would avoid that rebellion that he would have on his hands if they did. So at this point, he's got the animals frightened about Snowball. Snowball's depicted as this sort of menacing figure. Okay, all the dangers are on him. Okay, we also have Squealer spinning some lies about Snowball. He actually tells everyone that Snowball has been in league with Jones from the very beginning, and that Napoleon was the animal that fought hard for everyone and was key in the Battle of the Cowshed. We know that that's not true. But he somehow manages to alter the animals' memories. Here's something significant to read to you on page 89. It says, they thought that they remembered that they had seen Snowball charging ahead of them in the Battle of Cowshed, how he rallied and encouraged them at every turn. They thought that that's what happened, but they weren't sure. Okay, they doubted their memories. So Squealer's successful in getting them to question what they have already known about Snowball. This is not the only time this is going to happen. And even Boxer, who is, pretty trusting and pretty stupid, even Boxer struggles to believe that Snowball was a traitor. But by the end of Squealer's speech on page 90, he fell for the lies. He goes back to that phrase, if Comrade Napoleon says it, it must be right. Okay, So he stops questioning it after that point. My question to you is, are you convinced by this? If you were in Boxer's position, or if you were an animal on the farm, would you fall for this? That's up to you to decide. Okay. Another thing, probably one of the biggest things to discuss in chapter 7 would be the event with the confessions. Okay. This episode is incredibly horrific and sort of confusing. Okay. However, making this link to the outside of the text and history, it's actually mimicking the mock trials in Russia where people confessed or were forced to confess to things that they never did because they were threatened to do so. This is a show of Stalin's violence and tyrannical power outside of the text, okay? So going back to what happened in the actual book, Napoleon has broken another commandment when it came to the confessions. So let me read some of these things off to you. 4 pigs that were seen protesting when Napoleon abolished the Sunday meetings, they had their throats torn out by the dogs. So they were murdered for that. The hens, there were 3 of them that confessed that Snowball appeared to them in a dream and told them to disobey Napoleon's orders. They were slaughtered. Other casualties included a goose. You've got some sheep, all slain on the spot. I want to read this little passage to you on page 93, which is kind of disturbing here. It says, "So the tale of the confessions and the executions went on until there was a pile of corpses lying before Napoleon's feet, and the air was heavy with the smell of blood, which had been unknown since the expulsion of Jones." So it just really highlights how terrible this was. You're probably thinking right now, why would the animals confess to being traitors? Kind of like history. They were either brainwashed or they were forced by Napoleon to confess. This is probably due to their lack of intelligence or their inability to see Napoleon for what he is, and of course their fear. Because they were forced to do so through fear. Okay, I want to read another passage to you. This is actually on page 94. "In the old days, there had often been scenes of bloodshed equally terrible, but it seemed to all of them that this was far worse now because it was happening amongst themselves." Remember, from the get-go, Old Major warned against the animals tyrannizing over each other, and that, things would be bad if they did so. No animals have killed other animals at this point, and now this has happened. So now it's worse than what happened with Farmer Jones, okay? Napoleon needs the animals to confess these things because he needs to instill fear and prevent a large rebellion from happening. So you got to kill some to teach them a lesson, really, okay? So moving forward, in the aftermath of the confessions, we've got Clover really struggling with these things. Let me read this to you. It says, "The scenes of terror and slaughter were not what they had looked forward to on the night when Old Major first stirred them into rebellion. Instead, she did not know why, they had come to a time when no one dared to speak his mind, when fierce, growling dogs roamed everywhere, and you had to watch your comrades torn to pieces after confessing to shocking crimes. Also, she knew that even as things were, that they were far better off than they had been in the days of Jones, and that before all else, it was needful to prevent the return of the human beings." So even though she had some feelings that, things were not very good and that they're in fact worse, still, you're better off. It's kind of like interesting, her thought process. Do you agree with her? You decide. Okay. We've also got one final thing to discuss in chapter 7, and that's the banning of the song Beasts of England. Why would Napoleon feel the need to do this, guys? Remember, this song was a revolutionary song. It's what spurred the rest of them to get into a rebellion and overthrow the humans. So by banning this song, it will prevent the animals from rebelling against their current conditions. Okay, he doesn't want that happening again, so it's understandable why he would do so. My final question to you is, what this is he's censoring. Okay, he's pulling out what he believes that the animals shouldn't be hearing or knowing or listening to. This is going through the final question that I have. Is censorship a good thing? Is it good for the government? Is it good for leaders to decide that for you, to tell you what you should and shouldn't know? Think about that as I close with chapter 7. Hopefully this helps, guys. Let me know if you have questions over that, and I will talk to you again with chapter 8.